Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Thank you for your time. Most of you, all of you, are very, very busy people. And so we do not take your time for granted. Thank you very much. So we're going to get right into it. And I'll start at the very end. So, Otto, I have read your profile. That is like a profile of like 50 people. And with a profile like that, I'm thinking you can get a job anywhere in the world, any Fortune 500 company, anywhere in the world. But you have chosen to impact the underserved children in Nigeria. Why do you do what you do?
Thank you very much for that question. When we were sitting down and trying to get our seats, I knew that I was going to be the first person that, the question was going to come to. So I tried to avoid this particular seat, and they promised that I wasn't going to be the first person.
Oh.
But it's fine. Thanks so much for the question. I think you've asked a very interesting question, and I listened to your opening remarks where you compared, the development in Nigeria. When we put it in that context, I feel the potential we have is nothing compared to even what Canada has.
Wow.
And what even Singapore has. Because Canada today is requesting for, talents across the world. They have policies that makes it very easy for talents to come into the country. And most of those talents, they come from Nigeria. A huge number of the talents that, go into those countries come from Nigeria. So that tells us something, that we have great talents here, in terms of our population. And we make projections to say in the next 30 years, we're going to be about 400 million. Today, we are the 7th most populous nation. In 30 years, we're going to be the 3rd most populous nation.
That's huge.
That tells us that we have the greatest resource, which is the human resource. When we look at countries, and I said it a number, we call them the technology capital of the world. When we look at China, China could be said to be the manufacturing capital of the world. Most countries figure out what they want to be known for and what they want to excel in. Even down to Africa, we have Kenya building a huge tourism economy. Dubai has taken up that space as well. And this focus somehow gives these countries a huge edge. Now, what do we want to be known for as Nigerians? What do we want to be known for across the world? And I think we can be the human resource capital of the world.
I love it.
Our people are talented. Our people are gifted. Our people have every single potential it will take to actually keep us at the top, at the top part of the pyramid. But we are not investing in that human resource. And it's unfortunate because when you look at all the indicators that keeps us below the poverty line as a nation, we are literally at the top in all of them. The highest number of out-of-school children, the lowest investment in education. I saw the budget that is yet to be approved in Nigeria, and it's less than what we had last year. And it's so unfortunate because it shows that we are not even interested as a government to invest in education, because education literally is what gives people all the exposure, the enlightenment, and the capacity to be productive as a nation. And we are not being intentional in that. And for me, every other day, I walk across the street, I drive across the street, I see potential. I don't understand why on major cities from Lagos to Port Harcourt to Kano to Kaduna, you see children on a Monday morning begging on the streets, and the government most times are not even doing anything about it. It seems to be business as usual. But those could be innovators, they could be entrepreneurs, those are talents. And so it bothers me so much. I believe this conversation should go beyond just talk and to action. And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do.
Thank you so much. So I was going to ask, the second question is, so what is the state of the public, the state of education in the public schools? Because many people do not actually know. What is the state?
So I usually say that no education is better than, poor education is better than no education. And I don't need to reiterate the state of education in our public schools, because it's something we already are familiar with. I'm sure that you wouldn't want to take your child to a public school because you are not confident in the quality of education that those children.
But it wasn't always like that because we have a lot of people that went to Queen's College,
I think
King's.
it boils down to investments,
Okay.
the quality of investments in those institutions. Um, I think what's most important is the quality of teachers. A good teacher can be teaching a, a cluster of learners under a mango tree, and those children will come out, or those learners will come out, excelling. But a bad teacher would actually go into a very air-conditioned, beautiful-looking classroom, and without quality content, without great curriculum, without good pedagogical skills, the teacher would not be able to pass any learning. And this is what we see across most of our public schools. Teachers who got into teaching because it wasn't their first choice. They got into the teaching profession because that was the only option left for them. And this comes back to even the policy. To become a teacher in Nigeria, you do not need to be among the best. In fact, you need to be among I don't want to use the word the worst, but that's what the policy says. To go into study medicine in a university, you need to score about 240 in your JAM, 280 in some schools. To study engineering or accounting, maybe 220 to 190. To go into a college of education to study to become a teacher, you need to have just 80 over 400 or 100 over 400 in your JAM. And so you find that most people who go into the teaching profession go there because there was no other option for them. And when you also see the investment that is made in those colleges of education, you also see clearly that we're not really interested in investing in education. I think for us as a nation, we need to be extremely proactive. We need to be extremely proactive for two reasons. One is that what we have today is a great asset. Our population is the greatest asset, not the natural resources. And even when we look at the natural resources, that is an extreme asset that we have not. We just focus on oil and crude. We have tons of dozens and dozens and hundreds of natural resources that we have not even explored. But our human resources is the greatest asset we could have. You look at economies like Japan, without natural resources, but they are the third or fourth, biggest economy in the world. So as a nation, with a projected 400 million young Nigerians, wow. That population says that over 80% of that demographic will be below the age of 25. That is great talent. And I think it's important for us to be very proactive in building that talent for two reasons. One is if we do not, it's going to haunt us. It's going to, when you see every little opportunity that, we call them hoodlums, but they're not just hoodlums. They are people who are securities, are hairdressers, are barbers, are drivers, when you look at how much they earn, and they drive past, or you drive past them every day, but they know that no matter how much they earn, they will never be like you. They're going to be envious. But they have you go to countries like the US, and you see a barber who earns about $40 just to cut your hair. And for them, they can aspire to actually own a car, to buy a house. Yeah. So it's important that we start thinking of how to ensure that we create an economy that is almost equitable. I wouldn't say equal, but equitable for every single person. And it boils down to the decisions we make inside and outside government.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ladies now. Actually, I should have done ladies first. So, Mrs. Adedeji, you had 20 years experience in the pharmaceutical industry, and you packed it up and went into education. That must have been scary. That must have been do it afraid. Why education, and how scary was it for you?
Thanks. I think for me, it was a reaction to what I saw moving back to Nigeria. So the Nigeria that I left, education-wise, as you said, most of us went to public schools, versus the Nigeria when, fast forward 20 years later, when I came back, was not the same. And by that time, I had children. And so, of course, when you have children, you're invested in their development, your investment, etc. And I just found that the quality of education hadn't really improved. If anything, it had even dwindled. And also, I found, so for me, it was a reaction to what was going on in the community or in the society with my kids in mind. And so I thought to myself, if my own kids, going to these posh private schools, as I call them, if I feel that though they're still lacking in certain things, then what is going on in the public schools that I attended as a child? What skills are the kids learning? The curriculum is outdated. It's not really fitted to what is going on in reality. And so I just started to research that, okay, we're living here in Nigeria. How can my children experience, the level of education that from where they came from? And so that's how it began. So it began with my own children. It began with research. It began with, okay, if I can't find it, then I'll create it. So I'll put my money where my mouth is, so to speak. And so that's how I went into education, specifically centering around science, technology, engineering, and math education for children. And initially, maybe, we would go on holiday and I'll make sure I put them into a STEM camp. And I thought, this is crazy. If I am doing this for my own children, what about the children in Nigeria? And so that's where the idea came from. It wasn't automatic. It took about 3 years. As you said, my background is in pharma, so I expected that I would be going into the healthcare industry. And that's, where my career and education investment had gone into. So that was my expectation. But, like they said, that sometimes everybody else sees it except you. So finally, when I decided to go into education, my friends were like, thank God. Because apparently I was the resource they all came to for educational advice, etc. That they were wondering when I was actually now going to take the leap. So taking the leap was not it seemed automatic. Again, a reaction of a mother. So mother to my own children, but then mother to the children outside of my own sphere, thinking, how can we take this knowledge, knowledge-based, which is good, but then how do you apply that knowledge in the 21st century? What are the hard skills, but also the soft skills like critical thinking, problem solving, that you can apply that is needed in this day and age. So we have millions of graduates with certificates, but no skills. And so the program that I looked into early as you learn your ABCs to be able to read. These skills beget skills. They're in there. It's not in our curriculum. So how can you provide an enrichment program that the children can start to learn, even from as early as age 3, to develop these 21st century skills, which now with the pandemic, it seems, almost automatic. We're almost validated in our mission statement that we want to equip the Nigerian children with the skills they need for the future workplace, which is now, actually. It's not so far off anymore.
Fantastic. I mean, thank you. My kids have benefited from your program, and one of my daughters, she loves science. So thank you for doing this. I talked about Singapore in my opening speech, and I talked about how he's doing loads of subjects, history, geography. I'm so happy they're going back to physical school this week because it's been tough trying to keep up. Or should we be like in Singapore that they just focus on 4 subjects and they have, some of the highest performing results in science and math? So is this something that if we're saying we want to be, we want to develop, our technology space, expert-led digitization, is this something we should be doing?
I think really it needs to come from the top, having a national agenda. India did that probably 2 decades ago, that they were going to be known for innovation, technology, creativity. And they ensured that the educational system was modified for that future that they had capital around the world. But it was deliberate, and everything was sort of crafted towards that vision. So it really needs to come from the top. So, for some of us that are not willing to wait or are tired of waiting, as you can see in the private sector, a lot of people have, and the social sector as well, a lot of people have just taken things into their hands that, look, while the government is thinking or not thinking, we are just not going to wait around anymore. So though it should be a national plan, I don't think we can afford to wait for government, and I don't think people are anymore. Now, with the pandemic, it's become inevitable that change had to happen in the education sector. I think with everything that happened and the transition online, things will never be the same, whether it's in the public school system, or at least we hope not, that it won't be the same, whether it's in private or public. We all know that it's the private schools that benefited the most because they were able to react quickly to transitioning online. The public schools, particularly in Lagos State, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, particularly in Lagos State, were able to also respond with low tech. So when you think of technology, most people think of internet and online, etc. But then they also looked into some low tech resources, radio, TV, in response to the pandemic, just to ensure that the children keep learning. So I know that happened in Lagos. To the extent that it happened throughout the country, I don't know. But then again, you're seeing pockets of innovation around the country as opposed to a national one. Nevertheless, things, the change has started. The volcanic transformation has started, whether they like it or not, because it just laid to bear all the things and all the murmurings people in the education sector have been complaining about for decades, and nothing was done. Well, it had to be done, and it has started. So that transformation has started. And so when I was doing my own research as well regarding Volcano, as you said, transformation comes out of that. Newness comes out of that. Enrichment, nourishment comes out of it. But it depends on the response of the affected people. So I feel that the transformation has started. It was inevitable. It was unpredictable. It was unpredicted. And you have to respond. You can't fold your arms anymore. So I'm excited. I'm excited and I'm hopeful that the response will not just be a knee-jerk response from government, but that it will finally be something that, we can't continue like this. Like Otto said, we are human capital rich in this country. And our focus is, unfortunately, on the sort of hard resources. And I think even the recent protest that we have is a response to that. It's a response to the transformation that's needed. Again, millions are out there. If they have certificates, they're no job. If they have certificates, they don't have the required high-level skills. And if you look at the statistics, the number of people who are entering school, the ones that have the opportunity, by the time you go to primary, secondary, to university, maybe only 20%. It dwindles as you go from one stage to the other. So imagine that the ones that even graduated are even the lucky ones. Majority of them don't even have the access or the opportunity. So a lot of people keep saying it's a ticking time bomb, but I think we saw a glimpse of that in recent times. So the change has started.
Thank you so much. So Tolu, so we just finished with that, and then we can come to my people here. See, there's a huge opportunity for Nigeria to actually thrive from everything that's going on, even with the pandemic. In my research, a country like Canada came into their own after the World War I. There were economic, political, and social reforms. And one of the things they did that really brought in a lot of revenue and gave them their independence was manufacturing uniforms and also equipment for the war. So for us here in Nigeria, I talked in my speech, and even some of the panelists have talked about how we need to focus on, how we can try and bring the tech giants to Nigeria. If you look at Israel, I love Israel because they had no choice. They were boycotted by the Arab nations, so they had no choice but to look at how to trade with the world. So they developed their tech. And you have the big companies in there. One of the things that your company does is you match, talents to companies. Now, what are the challenges? What are the challenges in the market in terms of skills? How bad is it, or how good is it? And what are the opportunities? So for an aspiring entrepreneur, what are the opportunities that they can see so they can start a business?
Okay, thank you. So what are the challenges in terms of skills, right? So in our talent business, we have two sets of people that come up to us looking for jobs. We have those that are interested, but they don't have the skills. And there is not much we can do in terms of getting them jobs because employers of today are not looking to test with anyone, they don't have the patience as of now. And then we have those who have really invested in themselves. So you find people, they've all come out from the same university, the same educational system in Nigeria, but then they've invested in themselves. And so they're able to be placed in jobs with employers, right? So in terms of the skills, if we have, say, we post a job today, say an employer wants maybe a developer or something, we would have hundreds of people apply. If we say, okay, why don't you do a basic test? Let's see if you can develop, write any programming skills. Usually it's about 2% of that will scale through. And then it's only 2% of the talent that we can present to employers and say, okay, choose your pick. So that presents a challenge in the sense that, yes, in Nigeria, we are thinking of, at some point, exporting our skills or exporting our human potential, which is important. We have to. But then we have that skills gap. And out of that 2% that would maybe likely have been presented to candidates, maybe 50% of them today are looking to move to Canada or looking to move outside. Or they stay in Nigeria, but they can find, there are all these freelancer gig platforms that they can find some jobs, they get paid in dollars, so they don't need to work locally. So one, it's a challenge for local employers because the guys that you can really hire, most of them want to sort of work outside, right? Or they want to go to Canada. But two, because Nigeria needs to digitally transform, Africa as a whole needs to digitally transform. So we still need those skills here to help us digitally transform, to help us catch up with UK, US, and everyone. So we have that lack of skills, and then the rest of the guys who obviously want to be part of the job market, but no one wants to employ them. So for us, it's a challenge always trying to balance. Education is a big thing, as everyone has mentioned. We need to push education. But I also say that we need to look inward for competitive advantage. Okay? So today we might not be able to export like hundreds or thousands of software developers, but we can export people like data labelers. So what they do is big companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft, they are doing a lot on artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence needs humans to support that, right? So for example, if a computer can identify a cat, usually about millions of people should have actually gone through pictures and identified the cat beforehand so that the computer has the data to say, when it sees the cat, it says this is a cat. That kind of data labeling doesn't need as much education. So it's something we can actually export from Nigeria, and it's still part of tech. Mm-hmm. We can export because Venezuela is doing it. Lots of people in Venezuela are doing it. So in third world countries outside, people are actually being part of these circles where they can become data labelers, and they're making a bit of dollars, from as a tech exporter yet, but there's still other areas in tech, from data labeling to data entry, customer service, IT support. Those things we can still push out. So I still think there's an opportunity for us. Even now, even though the education isn't there yet, I think now there's an opportunity for us, primarily because we speak English.
Much. You talked about digital transformation. COVID came as a shock to everyone, and we literally had to embrace technology. I remember listening to the keynote speaker for today. I remember listening to him, and he was saying how, technology is no longer the back door. So if you are in the food business, you see yourself as a technology company in the business of food. So if you're in education, a technology company in the business of education, as opposed to if you're a church, a technology church or company, in the business of the gospel. But the thing is, even financial institutions, it was almost like they were just trying to catch up. They started, launching their apps when they should have done this ages ago. So what is digital transformation, and what do entrepreneurs need to do now to literally transform their business?
Okay, so I know digital transformation is it's almost like a buzzword, right? And if you check on LinkedIn, I think maybe 50% of people on LinkedIn now are digital transformation experts. But what is
No
digital?
wonder I was getting a lot of digital transformation invites. I was like,
In fact, you can add it to your profile too now. But what is digital my customer using technology, right? So sometimes a lot of it is not about the actual technology you use. It's really about your end customer, right? How can I use technology to improve the value or to change the type of value I'm giving to them? And it can be anything, even in food, you can find ways to use technology to deliver better value. So for example, I think it's a company. So they export salmon, fish, salmon to UK. What they do is,
Nigeria?
no, it's not Nigeria. Sorry, I think it's an Asian company. It's either Chinese. But what they do is at every stage, inputting information into a system so that at the end of the day, when a customer in the UK goes to the supermarket and it sees it sees a pack of fish, it can use its app to, read the barcode and then it sees the journey.
Oh, wow.
So he understands exactly how fresh it is, right? He understands where it's come from. And interestingly, they did that, they invested in that, and they found out that more customers were very excited that, look, I actually understand where my fish comes from. And they actually improved a lot of their revenues just by doing that. So what kind of companies in Nigeria do in terms of thinking that way? So like I said, it's not just about, let's build an app or build a website. It's really just more, my customer, this is the value I give to them. How can I improve that value? That's the outcome. How can I improve that value? When I start thinking of that, then the technology starts to come into play. As opposed to thinking, okay, now I want to be digitally transformed. So let me start thinking of technology. You think of your customer first. This is what I'm currently giving to them. I need to improve that drastically, 100%, 200%, or I need to even change what I'm giving to them. And then you start thinking of what technology would allow me to do that. Even just building content, that is, even just marketing content, whatever, that is even still increasing the value you are giving to your customer.
Thank you. And people can reach out to you because you provide strategic advice,
You
right?
can reach out to me here.
Okay, so Tumba, so we're going to come to you now. We've all talked about how it's important that we focus on, export-led digitization. There are opportunities there, and so we know that we need to kind of develop technology land, reform like the labor laws, invest in education, as everyone has said. Lagos, and also promote entrepreneurship. Lagos State is the commercial capital of Nigeria. To bring it from a Christian prophetic, point of view, there have been prophecies that we're going to have a Lekki tech hub. There's going to be a tech hub, explosion in technology. What is Lagos State currently doing? What are the initiatives they're doing now to encourage this digital transformation?
All right, thanks. Thank you very much for that question. So let me just speak a little bit about my office and how exactly it fits into your question. So the Office of Innovation and Technology was created about a year ago, and this was to basically catalyze the technology sector. So how can we raise the level of technology adoption? And how can we, if we are going to become export-led, right? We can't just be users of technology, but actually makers of technology, because it's a lot of usage that is going on now. The value is still being reaped from the underlying platforms that are made abroad. So how can we start to plant the seeds that will enable our young people to begin to, in a sense, manufacture the technology tools that other countries can also use, and we actually reap long-term value from those things. So so our programs are a combination of interventions and long-term policy thinking, right? We had one of our first engagement points last year called the Art of Technology. I don't know if you ever heard of it. So it was basically getting people in the technology industry, entrepreneurs, tech enthusiasts, innovators, developers, and government officials to kind of design, think what the next couple of years is going to be like. So out of that came our innovation and technology master plan that was focused on 4 main pillars: access, infrastructure, talent, and funding. And we've started a number of interventions looking at is infrastructure. Now, for technology to really thrive, how can you create safe havens that would help increase the value? So for instance, you spoke about a technology city. So one of the things that we are doing is earmarking land in Yaba, for instance, for a technology city, right? So if you look at the likes of Dubai Tech City or Dubai Media City, how can we also apply the kinds of policies that will help unlock value in that place when it comes to labor? How can people that would be involved talking to as well? How can tax incentives in that particular location also help reduce the cost of technology research and deployment? And then an overall communications backbone. We've been talking about the smart city in Lagos. How can, I mean, you know, a bunch of my colleagues here mentioned in the next 20, 30 years, we're going to be this population. And we know that Lagos State is going to bear the brunt of most of that net immigration into Lagos. How do you manage transport? How do you manage all of that? So our city needs to be smarter. And how can we help catalyze that movement? And that's why we had to have that innovation master plan to kind of roadmap our way to that particular endpoint. So if you've noticed all around the city, you can't have a smart city without a robust communication infrastructure. And that's what has led to the optic fiber deployment in Lagos. So, and you know, the good thing about that is that it's not just Lagos State deploying fiber optic cable. It is doing that, connecting, it's going to be connecting all public primary and secondary schools, all primary healthcare facilities, and all secondary healthcare facilities. So you have higher health outcomes, right? But even catalyzing the private sector players. The government does not have the money to fiber every single location in Lagos. But how can you incentivize the private sector to reduce their cost of expansion and thereby pass on those costs to the customers like you and me? And so along the rights of way of that fiber optic cable that the government is deploying, they're also doing the 6 core docks, right? So the 6 core docks entail the docks that house the fiber optic cable. We know that one of the highest overheads for telecoms companies is civil works, expanding the infrastructure. Now, how can you reduce that cost for them so that, you know, they don't have to dig? We go around Lagos, people are digging everywhere, the infrastructure is spoiling and all of that. So why don't we put the infrastructure there and let the telecom companies just, you know, just put the cable within those houses, right? And so they save costs, you know, they save the infrastructure because every time you dig, you are spending money to replace the infrastructure. So putting the government pioneering that infrastructure rollout so that it's cheaper for the other private sector people to do it, I think that is a very, very key project. So that's already going. We've already covered about 1,000 kilometers. The first phase is about 3,000 kilometers. The second phase is another 3,000, which is 6,000 kilometers. So if we're going to really have digitalization, the first step is a robust communication infrastructure. And so government is leading that charge together with helping to catalyze infrastructure spread within the private sector as well. We are looking at talent. You know, we spoke about education as well. And just earlier this year, we launched the Lagos State Science Research and Innovation Council that is supposed to have direct intervention into high-level research and development within our tertiary institutions, because we need to train the young people from an early age. But at the same time, when they do go to the next level, what are the kinds of subjects, what are the kinds of research work that they will be involved in that will create jobs, that will create value. So the Lagos State Science Research and Innovation Council actually funded about 16 research initiatives in September across the different universities in areas like health, COVID-19, alleviation, the circular economy, recycling, manufacturing, and many things across the civic gambit. So these kinds of interventions are some of the things that, at least from a subnational, from the Lagos perspective, these are some of the things that are happening. And it's many more. Perhaps if we have time, we can also talk about a lot of that.
Okay. Thank you. And the question, okay, so how do people get to know about these initiatives so they can benefit? And one thing I was going to ask was, I know in Israel, there's this program that they call the Yozma program, where they fund, they actually put money, the government puts money into businesses, and they also match it with private, investors as well. Is there anything like that in the States? Are there any plans for?
Absolutely. So if you look at organizations like the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund that have direct interventions into small businesses, they have MSME programs. They also have programs like the Idea Hub that helps people with, very smart ideas, but probably do not have the resources nor the kinds of skills to bring their ideas to prime time. So the Idea Hub is a program that helps them with those resources, mentoring, and possible financing hookups within the ecosystem. The Lagos State Science Research and Innovation Council as well, of which I'm a board member, also conducts periodic call-outs, innovation and technology call-outs. So for instance, in September, we awarded about 7 innovation companies, a minimum of 5 million naira to intervene in their businesses. Companies like Price Pally, Dosi Healthcare, and many other innovative companies. So we do have direct monetary interventions, but not just monetary interventions, but also making sure that these companies, for them to be able to scale and add value and create jobs, we fast track them to the right regulatory channels, right? Because we see a company that, look, this company can create a massive amount of jobs, and how can they get their permits faster? How can they meet the right people? How can they get access to the right funding? How can they move within the right networks? So that's some of the jobs that the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund and the Science Research and Innovation Council are doing.
Thank you so much. So, Simi, congratulations. Just got appointed as the CEO of Junior Achievement Africa. That is huge. Feels good to be a woman. Okay, so you're a brave, very, very brave woman. You had a nice job in investment banking, resigned, and decided to come as, to set up the Junior Achievement Office in Nigeria to focus on, innovation, entrepreneurial skills, and also financial education. So the other side of education, not just academics. And you did this after working with Goldman. I think you volunteered when you were working with Goldman Sachs at the Junior Achievement in New York. What is it that you saw that we needed in Nigeria? Why is entrepreneurship important? And, innovation, because we talked about, I think you mentioned Dubai, the Dubai internet city. So Dubai, they have this nice internet city. Also, even Singapore, we talked about how tech they are and they invest in technology. But they've done very little in terms of progressing on innovation. There's really no innovation. But what Israel has been able to do so well in that, in terms of innovation, how can we not just say, okay, we have a tech hub, but how can we actually promote innovation?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So there are 2 questions in there. The first one about, why Junior Achievement and why I left New York to bring it to Nigeria. So growing up in Nigeria, going to schools like QC, Queen's College, and being smart, I was told I had three options, doctor, lawyer, or engineer, basically. And I went to the US for college thinking I was going to be either a doctor or a lawyer. And I very quickly found out that I didn't like either of them. And so for a long time, I was exploring. I participated in a lot of internships. And it wasn't until my, almost my final year in college that I did an internship at McKinsey, and I discovered consulting and business and, thinking. Like, there's an organization that is just paid to think and help people think and solve their problems. And I really got excited about that. That was the first time I knew what strategy was, what innovation was. And I realized that I had a gift for that, and somehow it had just been buried because I went to school in Nigeria and I didn't know about it. And so fast forward, started working in investment banking and discovered junior achievement. And again, I was sent to schools to teach young people how to think and business and entrepreneurship. And I said, if I'd had this growing up in Nigeria, I wouldn't have waited until almost finishing university to know that my strength is strategy and innovative thinking. And so I decided to bring it back to Nigeria. I was 24 at the time, idealist, and wanted to change the world. And that was 21 years ago. And in doing that, we've reached over 1 million students in Nigeria. But because of the nature of the landscape, it's still, I don't want to say thank God for pandemic, because it's not a good thing that it happened, but it really forced people to see what we've been seeing, that, we really need a shift in the way that we do education in Nigeria. So our flagship program is a company program where secondary school students come together, look around them and look at a problem and say, how can we build a business that solves this problem? So not only do they solve the problem, but they also make a lot of money. And we do competitions to bring them together at the end of their school year to say which one was the best business in your state. And then we bring all of them to Lagos to say which is the best in Nigeria, and then the best in Nigeria then represents us in Africa. We've not been able to go worldwide because they can't compete worldwide, because the kind of businesses that the secondary school students worldwide are developing, they have robots, they have this, they have that. So it's been my passion to push us. And so this past year with the pandemic, we've seen that we need this kind of education in Nigeria. We started with 10,000 students this year. We could only finish with 1,300 because when the schools shut down, it was only those 1,300 that could continue online. Wow. And so that just shows us, and I'm glad you spoke about wiring all the schools in Lagos, because that would go a long way. These students have it all in them. If you come to our competition and you see it's always the public school students, if you see what they are developing, because they see the problem and they know the solution. And so they just need the platform, they need the resources. And so it's not about let's go to Brazil or whatever, bring in the experts. No, they have it in them. They just need the room to grow that, design thinking skills, the strategic thinking, the critical thinking. And so that's my passion. And they saw, I guess they saw that that's what we're doing in Nigeria now. They want us to do it across Africa, which is why I got appointed. But Nigeria is still a big market for us. It's a big market for Google. It's a big market for all the big techs that we're partnering with at Junior Achievement. They all say Nigeria is the number one market for them in Africa because they see the potential. If we can wire Nigeria, they see the potential for them in terms of business. This is not even CSR, in terms of the business outcome. And so I'm hoping that this will force all our governments to think about how do we use this opportunity to include digital skills in our teaching. What was your second question again? I forgot. I think I've mixed it.
No, you actually answered. Yeah, you actually answered. I think one of the things that I wanted to, get was also in terms of why is, entrepreneurship important as a driver of economic growth?
Okay, yes. So don't do a tech city for a tech city's sake. And I'll go back to what Tolu said, which is think about the customer, right? And then work backwards. And one of the, I don't know if any of you have seen Social Dilemma, which is this, documentary on Netflix, and it's about the dangerous side of technology. And I think that, one of the things I love about junior achievement is that we start from age 5, and we start teaching them about, civic education and being, we start with, 5-year-olds who are thinking about ourselves and our, relationship to society, our families, our community. And so we start building in them this, I'm responsible for myself and my family, and they're responsible for me. And it's very important to inculcate that as they learn about the technology, because as we get deeper and deeper into technology, we see the darker side of technology. You can use it to manipulate people. You can use it to cause wars. You can use it to, make riots go violent very quickly. So technology can actually become a very dark thing if the people behind the technology don't have the kindness and the empathy that, we want to use this for good. And so that's something that I think should go hand in hand with the tech hubs and the tech cities. How do we develop kindness and empathy so that you are actually using technology to improve society, not to divide?
Thank you very much for that. And I was going to say, well done on impacting 1 million public school students, 1 million students. That is huge. One of the things that deters people from starting business, and I think is actually even a bigger challenge for nonprofits, is funding. So it must have cost a lot of money to impact, 1 million students. What would you like to, what kind of advice can you give to someone who has a nonprofit, and is looking and, wants to impact the education sector or the healthcare sector? What can they do to attract funding? What are the things that they need to do?
Okay. So you have 2 questions in there also. One, it didn't cost as much as it could have cost because we had an amazing, thousands of people who volunteer to teach. So we don't have to pay people to teach. We have volunteers to teach. And I remember when I first moved back in 99, and I said, we're going to do this program, we're going to go to schools, and we're going to get people to volunteer their time. And I was laughed out of the room. They're like, what? Everybody is struggling. You're going to get people to actually go and teach for free. No. But it actually happened because I saw it myself when I used to teach in the Bronx in New York, the way the children's eyes light up when you walk into the classroom. It's a drug. You can't resist it. Once you volunteer once, you feel like your life suddenly has meaning. And so I'm very grateful. We have over 5,000 volunteers who teach in schools across the country for us. The second thing is that, as we develop programs for, if we can incorporate some sort of, so NYSC, I always say the NYSC is one thing that is such an engine that could be used much better than it's used in Nigeria. If you say you have 300,000 people graduating university every year, you place them in internships where they learn critical skills that will be useful for them in business. And you say as part of that, they also have to give back by going to schools to teach entrepreneurship, financial literacy, digital skills. So first of all, they have to learn it. And then in teaching it, it becomes part of them because you learn best when you teach. And so it doesn't cost to do that. It just costs political will to say we're going to reorganize our NYSC system so that they're learning practical things and they're teaching. And so they're making themselves useful. The part about funding is really, what is your story? One of the reasons they also told me that they were putting me in Africa is that your enthusiasm for fundraising. And I'm like, I don't have, and nobody likes fundraising. I don't have enthusiasm for fundraising. What I have enthusiasm for is creating a story of the future and presenting it to you in such a way that you want to be part of it. And so if I'm able to create a vision to say, this is what we're going to develop, we're going to make Lagos, a city where all our secondary school students are digitally literate, they're innovative, they're this, they're that. By the time we had a meeting with Mrs. Adefisayo, she was the one convincing her team, we have to do junior achievement in all our schools. So it doesn't...
So the value.
Yes, because she saw how this could be my legacy. as a minister for commissioner for education in Lagos, that it was during my time that we actually got this thing done. And so communicate the value, see it from the other person's point of view. What is their pain point? That, CSR executive that you're going, they have deliverables. What is it that their company is trying to achieve? And how are you going to sell it to them in a way that you're solving their problem, you're solving your problem, and you are creating a vision that's compelling?
Fantastic, thank you. Gaze Baba, that name is heavy. So you're an artist. Yeah. You also call yourself a culture architect. But even in terms of being an artist, is not the conventional, career. But you're not even just an artist. You have chosen not to go the commercial or mainstream route. That must be difficult. How do you stay focused on your God-given vision despite any difficulty?
Thanks for having me. Shout out to everybody.
Shout out, you see?
Excuse me.
Too cool.
It's tough. I can't say it's not tough, but
you've achieved a lot. I was looking at your profile. You have done very well.
I actually have to remind myself at times, because there's just so much that you want to do. There really is so much that I want to do. I really don't. The reason why I say I have to remind myself a lot of times is because most of the time I feel underachieved. If I put it that way, because there's just so much. So yeah, how am I able to stay the course? Somehow.
And not go and get a banking job.
Well, I never thought of banking job. I actually thought of teaching at a point. No jokes. After I'd become an artist, like 3 years into my career, which is like 7 years ago, because I'm like 10 years in the game now. So I did apply to Corona. No jokes. Okay. To teach. Because I was thinking of what can I do on the side that I can still do the music. And I just figured, okay, maybe teaching. But then I was called to come, and then that morning I was thinking to myself, do I really want to do this? So I didn't go. I just blanked out and I focused.
Exactly.
Well, when I get into what I'm doing now, you see that I'm actually now in school.
His story is, and now I think now it makes so much sense. My second question. So you call yourself a culture architect, and you started this, so this is still education. You started this lighthouse movement where you decided to go to public schools and use entertainment as a tool for education. So you're passing on values such as identity, integrity. Why did you? What were the problems there that you identified? How bad is it? How bad are the values? And what do you hope to achieve with your lighthouse movement? So you're actually teaching in a different way.
Yeah, I'm actually teaching, but in a fun way. So I can't like say I saw this and then I felt, let me go and do this. I'm a faith person, I'm a Christian. So if at the risk of sounding spiritual.
You can, this is a very spiritual event.
I believe that it took God 3 years, about 2 to 3 years to get me to do it. Because I was focused on my music and blowing and getting the music out. But I was not doing the kind of music that I used to blow, And I could not do anything else because at the core of my being, I want to achieve social transformation. Like, even when my music has like a Christian base, or the songs that I do that have a Christian foundation, from the very beginning, everybody could tell that I was different. I'm not the church artist. My first single was called Follow, Follow, and I was speaking against peer pressure. I was speaking against, I was trying to get young people to be self-assured. That the fact that everybody seems to be doing this doesn't mean I have to do it. I can stand out. I don't have to drift with the flow. It was so different that there were churches that said I couldn't perform there because it was not, you get. So, and then I did Little Drops, which was saying Nigeria is like an ocean, and we all contribute to this ocean called Nigeria. It's always easy to like say this person is at fault, that person is at fault. But then when you litter the ground, you contribute to the flood that happens 8 months down the line. When you pay for special center for your child, you are wrecking the future of that child. When you ABSU 5, the 5 girls that were raped in Abia, it was big like 5 years ago online. I talked about it in the song. Alu 4, the 4 undergraduates that were lynched in Alu in Port Harcourt. I talked about it in the song. So I made that kind of song. Wambiliki Wobia, I faced the government and I liken Nigeria to a family with well-fed parents but malnourished children. The parents, leaders, the people, the children. So the government is bloated. The people are suffering. That kind of thing. So at the core of my being, I've always wanted, my music and my being is always about like social transformation, but I didn't see what God saw. So when he was like trying to get me to go to, he didn't tell me to go to schools. He just told me to go to my alma mater, King's College. Do a concert for the boys. You came out from there, do a concert for the boys.
I love God. He will just give you,
You know,
like
so it
Tesla.
was just that, and then I got my guys together, have like a group of people who think in the same way, creatives who think in the same way. And then finally in 2017, we went to King's College. We organized the concert. The day before we went was when I knew I was going to go around high schools. And since then, we've done about 14 editions, reached about 20,000 students. So we went to King's College, then we went to Federal Science and Technical College, it's in Yaba, then Queen's College. We've been to Queen's College like 4 times. Then Green Springs, then we did Oxbridge, then Dansor, then Babcock High School. So we've done like schools, you know. And what we do is we create these fun experiences, music, but it's value-laden music. It's value-laden entertainment. So we focus on high schools because my target is like 11 to 17, that period when you are not too young to be conscious of what's going on in the nation and what's going on around, you know, but you are not too old to be formed. You can still be molded. So high schools, 11 to 17. So what we do is when we sing, when we dance, when we perform, we're advocating values. The biggest of the values we advocate is stewardship. Stewardship is taking responsibility for something, even if it isn't your personal possession. That, I believe, is the biggest problem in Nigeria. Everybody, not everybody, most people are selfish. We think only for ourselves. That's why you run. That's why you go on run a red light and all of that. So there's a speaker right here that the people can't see, but there are speakers. This speaker is not my property. If it spoils, it does not touch me directly. But then if I see something that can harm this speaker, I should be able to take responsibility for it not to be harmed. Because when it is harmed or spoiled, the person who has to take direct responsibility for it, one way or the other, it's going to come round. It may not be today, but it will come round. So when we go to schools, we advocate these values. They have a great time. The students always want us to come back because they have a great time, but then they learn, you know. So basically.
Wow, fantastic. I can already see a lot of room for synergy with some of the panelists. I love it. Thank you. Thank you very much. And, you know, I just wanted to add, just to let you know that you're doing such a fantastic job because, so every conference, there's always a speaker that God reveals in a dream to me. And you were one of those. Literally, a dream like gaze should be on this panel. So you are...
Sorry, thank you.
So your work is valued. Thank you. Wow, I can't believe it's an hour already. Wow, thank you all so much. Like, I can go on and on and on. I wish I wasn't the moderator so that I would take in my notes, but you know what? I'll go back and I'll watch this again. And now that I have your contact, I would also leverage on the relationship. But thank you so much for this. I'm sure everyone that has been watching today, you've learned so much. Please, if you have, kind of type in the comment section what you've learned today. We are about halfway done now. We have some amazing things coming up. So don't go anywhere. But I mean, please, wherever you are, give them a round of applause. Also, you can actually type this is now in a virtual world, right? So type your clap emoji in the comment section. Thank you.